Good morning, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is May 20th, 2025 at 9:04 in the morning. So we're going to take a gander again at S 122, which is the Economic and Workforce Development Bill that was sent over by the Senate. There's a number of pieces that I think we'll be removing because they weren't funded in the budget. Maybe Patrick, before we have Rick, we could go over that with you. And Rick, I don't know if you can just pull the bill up while Patrick's here, or you won't have to do it either.
I couldn't tie a tie this morning, so apologies for that. But Pat Tiverton with the Joint Fiscal Office.
Like you had an overly great weekend.
Last night I was getting a lemon square out of a pan for my wife and I accidentally stabbed myself.
Ouch.
Yeah, it hurt. So I guess I can just run down the list and tell you what's in and what's out. I talked to Maria and Amy just to confirm all of this stuff on Friday. Hopefully none of it's news to anyone, but the first appropriation is in section 2A, was to the Department of Economic Development for expanding services for small businesses. That is not in the budget.
And one, they extended the tax credit $1 million. Is that correct?
The downtown village tax
Yeah.
credit? To my knowledge, that's not in the budget either. That was not accommodated for.
Thought I saw something when we went
Be happy to
over.
double check on
Yeah,
that.
I thought they added $1 million to
I
that.
believe the Senate sent it over to you with $1 million expansion, but I need to check on if that's.
Edie, do you remember? Apparently not. Okay, we'll let you check into that, just to double check.
I might be able to do that in real time also. But moving down the list, there was the Professionals of Color Network that did end up in the budget with a one-time appropriation for 200,000.
I don't believe we need language for that, do we?
That'd be a question for Rick, I think.
Rick Sagel, Office of Legislative Counsel. We're talking about 2B.
Yes.
So the appropriation is 200, right, Pat,
Yes.
in the budget. There's not, in my recollection, there's not specific language about what that money is used for. So if you want the money to be tied to this language, it's fairly squishy anyway. And by squishy, I mean it's not really directing this network to do anything new. So I guess it's up to you all if you want to. You can also change language if you want the money to be specifically used for something.
No, I think it's just to continue on whatever, the good things that they're doing, so.
So remove 2B.
Let's leave it there for now. We'll just double check with.
Some of the language in there is about expanding their services. They won't be able to expand. They'll
That's
just be
true.
maintaining.
Yeah, so maybe. Yeah, I think we could just pull out the expansion and just stay into support. Okay, so we'll get into that with Rick when we.
So next we come to 2C. There was a Vermont Small Business Development Center appropriation to HCCD. That is in the budget at a for a one-time appropriation of 150,000. Also to ACCD for the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund. There's a $25,000 one-time appropriation. However, that's in addition to their base funding. So put together, that'll be funded at 275,000. But there's a one-time sort of $25,000 top up in the budget.
I don't think we need language for that either, but we'll double check. Maybe. You could check with Emily. I think she. may know whether or not language is needed.
Like Burn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think when Edie and I met with them last week, I think they told us the only thing we might want language for is the International Trade Office in Montreal. But if you could just double check
Sure.
and let us know, thank you.
So in 2E, there's the micro business development program that has a base appropriation of $493,339 in the budget. In 2F, the Small Business Development Center, that's not included in the budget.
Micro business, that's their base appropriation anyway, right?
That's correct. There was the extra like $70,000 in section 3A for the federal matching for the Vermont Arts Council that has been included in the budget.
You don't need that.
The Arts Council database, that is not included in the budget. That's section 3B. And then there was the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance Climate and Circularity Outdoor Business Program, which is not included in the budget. That was in section 4. And then the International Trade Office in section 5 has a one-time appropriation of $150,000. Not included in the budget also is any of the per diem money for the Irish Trade Commission.
There's no money for that.
And that's pretty much all the money that was in that bill. So I just sent an inquiry about the tax credits and can confirm that while I hang out with you guys. Let's see.
Thank you, Patrick.
That's a quick question.
Sure.
So I didn't catch, what did you say about the Vermont Small Business Development Center? Going back to,
They got 150 instead of the
Okay.
300.
so they did get the 150. I
Yeah.
just wanted to double check.
Yeah.
Great.
And I think from what we heard, that would basically pay state colleges to help house them.
It's a one-time.
So it would basically keep them at,
Yeah.
keep them flat.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
There won't
That's
be
fine.
any expansion. Okay. Other questions, Patrick? Great, thanks, Patrick. Great.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I could tie a tie this morning, so I am wearing the tie, not to show off or anything. Rick Sagal, Office of Legislative Counsel. I think Pat's waited on answers for the few questions you all had about the downtown village center tax credit program and a few others. So happy to talk about if you want to keep some of this enabling language. You can. If you want to change it, you can. You can get rid of it. Certainly the ones that weren't budgeted, I would recommend removing those. There's no reason to do that now because it's not in the budget. So up to you all how you want to handle these sections. There's also the Trade Commission and the study and the task force, Convention Center Task Force.
I think, let's look at the language for National Trade Office.
Yep. So that is section 5, page 7. So it's 150, which
Right, and
I can read it and then, or y'all can just read it as I take notes.
is in statute now for trade office.
I don't know. I can get back to you on that. I've not.
I mean, we're just, I think the 150 is just to continue providing the trade office, so. And exactly what language we need for that. But I think it's already doing it, I think hires consultant, develops and deploy, I mean, it does everything that we're saying there already. And we just want them to continue that. I think the 350 was, they wanted to do a broader expansion outside of even Canada, but make it more international, worldwide type thing. And I think the 150 just maintains their presence in Montreal.
I'll get back and confirm.
Yeah.
What is in statute now?
Okay. Next is the Ireland Trade Commission. That Representative Casey would like to speak with us about that, or we make a decision on keeping that in or out. Certainly wait until the party chair is back with us. Have that discussion. Before we make a determination of whether we leave it in or not.
The section 9 would be the next new section. That is the study for ACCD to analyze ways the state can better enable business growth and access to capital. Not sure if you had ACCD in to.
Yeah, I think we need to get Breck in for that too. Breck, I mean, when he was here, I wanted to ask him that question. I don't think we did. I'm almost thinking that's something they already do, but maybe not. And from what I understand, I don't think that they weighed in on that piece. It was in Senate.
Yeah.
So we probably should hear from him as well. Okay.
Then we had section 10, that is the convention center and performance venue task force.
There. We need additions to that.
In my notes, I can go over the members that you talked about adding an RPC representative.
Yeah.
Right now you have the president of the RDCs.
Okay,
So you have 6 current members on the task force. You could add a 7th, you could change out one of the current members to add in. And would you want somebody appointed by the RPCs, or would you want, I can't remember the leadership of that organization, but if they have a president or if they have a chair.
weigh in.
Yeah, for the record, Austin Davis, from the First Lake Champlain Chamber. I think the RDCs do have a chair, I believe, or president similar to the RPCs have that similar to the RDCs. So the chair or president, whichever the terminology, I can check with those folks. Or a designee would be great language.
Oh, I know the question was, do we need any members from the House and the Senate to be sitting on that task force?
The legal question or
No, I think that's more of a question.
Okay.
That we need to better understand. We have the RDC, but we should have the RPC as well. Okay, the RPCs that.
Is it likely to be something that is sort of policy driven or more just nuts and bolts? How do you project this happening kind of thing? If it's policy driven, it might be a good idea to have some legislative.
Right now it lists one house and one senate.
Right,
No.
yeah, I don't know if they're needed to be
Yeah.
on this initial task force.
I mean, anything they do will
Although,
get anyway. I don't know.
maybe we should leave them and, when you look at C1, determine the ability of the state to support projects through appropriations, bonding, tax instruments and other financial assistance. Probably not a bad idea to
Yeah,
have a member from the House and the Senate, so
That's why I was thinking about the
We can-
policy.
we could probably leave them in and we'll see what appropriation says about that.
I'll say one thing to know, we stripped out the per diem language in this group. So I told Senate Appropriations, you have this task force without any per diem language, could be troublesome with members on it. How are they gonna get reimbursed?
I think there's already underlying statute that provides the per diem for legislative members. Which I don't think you need to specifically.
It's right, yeah, there, I have to double check, and Pat's here too, you may be able to talk about that, but I rarely see a group with legislators that does not have that per diem language. Because someone could say, you're not supposed to get paid because you're not told you can get paid for this. Anyway, something to think about. I'll get back, and Pat has something.
But we'll just add the RPCs and then we'll.
The president or chair,
My recollection was that there was an interest in DEBT joining as well. Instead of an ACCD designate.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think
DET.
they were worried, I think there's a possibility that maybe tourism marketing could be appointed instead of secretary, but maybe if we're specific that it's DED. Yeah, maybe we change that to the commissioner, DED or designate. Good with that.
Yeah.
I'll say it.
all right, then. Any other questions about the task force? We have section 10A, which is the contingent on funding. I would remove that with an amendment because we know what's funded.
Well, back on page 13, Rick, down on line 18. You have to change that to, also change that to the commission.
Thank you. Okay, 10A is the contingent on funding, which was added by Senate Appropriations. Because we know what's funded, what's not funded, I would remove that.
Yeah.
And then we have 10B, this is the Commission on International Trade, different from the International Trade Office. We spoke about this last time. This is the kind of defunct group that is appointed by the governor and others that meets to currently look at trade agreements between the federal government and a foreign country. And there was an amendment in the Senate that would have this group look at also trade agreements between Vermont and a foreign country. No testimony was taken. I just want to let the committee know about this. Obviously, it's not currently active. I'm not sure who you'd call in to testify about this, but that would be the change. You're also requiring that any trade commission like the Vermont Ireland Trade Commission be reviewed by this commission and provide a recommendation as to whether the trade commission shall be established.
That, would that include also the sister state?
So, no, because that's a working group. They weren't really.
But when the working group, I think, with recommendations.
Right.
If the recommendation is to begin that sister state, would that fall into that as well?
Yeah, I'll be curious, once we get that report, depends what they recommend and how you all want to handle what they recommend. But I imagine that it may be housed. And I think what I may do is I may remove this non-BSA 111B language and kind of reconfigure that to not be specific to the Vermont Ireland Trade Commission, and maybe I need to think about that some more, is my answer. The sister state, I think, we can't really write this depending on that. I think that's.
Agreed,
don't
but
know what
I'm
that's
just
gonna-
wondering. The language in there, would they fall into? Before it could be established, fall into the,
Before the sister state,
yeah.
I'm trying to remember that.
Comes into,
Yeah. It depends how it's drafted, and if this is how it's passed, it would need to be non-BSA 111B, right? If it's not, then it wouldn't apply.
so this is very specific to,
Certain trade commissions with specific countries. I think sister state would be different.
would the International Trade Office fall into this?
No, because they're given the authority. I think to review these, so they can't really review themselves.
Well, it's the commission, it's this trade commission that's kind of oddball.
Right. But again, pursuant to the specific chapter,
Yeah.
anything else, they don't have to be consulted, only this thing that doesn't even exist yet, right? This non-BSA 111B is new for the Vermont Ireland Trade Commission, and there would presumably be more if you ever wanted to add other countries to it. I'll be honest, we didn't take testimony. I'm not super comfortable with this, because I don't know what this group is doing, if anything, right now, and why initially they were not given the authority to review foreign and Vermont agreements. There may be a reason for that. It would help to know a little bit more about the history of the commission and why. I looked up when it was created. There's nothing about why Vermont was excluded from, I assume maybe separation of powers. The governor.
Yeah, there wasn't any testimony.
I mean, it was created, I think, trying to remember when, but I didn't see any testimony.
I mean, did the Senate take testimony in that section?
This was a floor amendment at the third reading.
Wow.
Thanks.
Herb. What would be the consequences of simply zipping that section?
Nothing, because right now no one sits, I think there's only two people that sit on the commission, that's myself and the chair of Senate Economic Development.
When was the last time you met?
I've never met as chair. So. Yeah, I think if everybody's comfortable, why don't we just remove this for now? Yeah. I think we need
We can't
to
include
delve
something we
into
know
this a
nothing
little bit
about.
more and better understand.
And maybe Sister State reconfigures this anyway. Maybe
Yeah.
you figure out a way to bring in Sister State to redo the statute and create something new, better.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Here's the one. No. Okay.
Who made the amendment?
Like Senator Hardy is part of public record.
Like, see what she was getting at. Okay.
And then the last section is the effective date, so July 1st, 2025.
Okay. Any more questions?
Oh, sorry, the baby bonds language, John should have that this afternoon,
Okay.
so,
Then we'll take a look at that.
yeah.
Yeah, so, excuse me, I just got confirmation on what I was thinking. So the budget includes basically a $13.5 million accommodation for new tax credits, tax breaks. That 13.5 is completely allocated to S51, which this body voted out last week, something like that. So there's no
So we don't,
alien expansion in
okay,
there.
so we don't need anything for the downtown impact credit.
It looked like there was one no change to a not in the language I was just looking at, but.
Grammatical, yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about it.
We can remove that then.
Kind of a thought idea.
Mhm.
Okay, so here's my idea. Seems like the big focus of this bill was to try to address more resources for very small businesses. I think with that joint hearing we had a while back and testimony we've taken, there's not a lot, right? So would it make sense to include in this a similar to the sort of group looking at financing of small businesses, but a group that would look at how do we create more of a structure in state government to help support small businesses?
You mean in the report that is contemplated coming back from
Yeah.
HCD?
Yeah. Like there's the financing and access to capital, but there's also, as I've looked through, DED and the job descriptions and all the different things everyone does, there's really not a lot of focus on those small businesses. So it could be a way to help them find things that we could look at next year to help those small businesses out that would thought I had when I was reviewing everything this morning. There's the kind of different ideas that were brought to us by BSJF and BTS, BDC, et cetera, which are all great ideas, but are there, maybe would it make sense to have kind of a bigger picture strategic look at with, maybe even a couple of those folks, DED, representatives from Senate and House Economic Development. I don't know, maybe that doesn't even need to be in a bill. We could just do some of that work off session or.
We're asking, can we go back to the beginning of that section? Okay. You want to work with Rick on this, or
Sure.
I would be careful about adding members to a study group. But I think we can add, ACCD can certainly.
It's really kind of just be giving them direction to please do this.
Yeah.
Would it be, so Rick, you and I can work on it. Would it be then just part of that? It would just be a study group that would look at financing and also supports for businesses.
Yeah, well, they've already got a charge,
Yeah,
so it's solicit testimony from startups, early stage businesses
yeah.
that have struggled to raise capital.
Yeah.
I imagine that DED would be the one to take this on.
Yeah.
They would, I'm sure, talk to various groups, maybe like BSET and
Yeah.
provide Sustainable Jobs Fund and others. SBDC, all of them. Maybe you want some language in there that specific, not calling those businesses out, but calling out the agency and department that you want them to solicit from the various groups or various business for providers that are out there that assist us, or the RDC,
Okay.
All right. Everybody good with this up to this point? So we'll get more information about what language is needed in there. And then, have you work with Rick. We will see the baby bond language next time. We'll also take testimony from the Irish Commission, we'll ask Representative Casey to come in that with us as well. Okay. So I think that's it for this morning. This afternoon, we have Rick at what time? At 1? Okay. So this afternoon, we're going to look at S69 age appropriate design code. Trying to get that ready to tee up to move. Don't know, there's an amendment being drafted right now on Ways and Means amendment to S-127. We'll not sure when that's gonna be ready for us to look at, probably won't be till tomorrow. I can kind of give you, well, I'll wait until I see the language. I don't wanna get ahead of it, just in case things change, but. Yeah. So any questions before we go off live? Okay, so we're on the floor at 10, feedback in here, either 1 o'clock or depending how long the floor and caucus and shows. But 1 o'clock's the target.